Hello, my friends. In the Kursk direction, the Ukrainian forces are making progress and continue to advance. Today, it's reported that they have captured settlement of Внезапне, so which is approximately here, moving forward by another 11 kilometers. Additionally, it was confirmed just last evening that the Ukrainian forces advanced to the village of Kauchuk. So, the Russian Minister of Defense is now stating that the Ukrainian forces are advancing in the areas of the settlements of Tonilivka, Kavchuk, Levshinka, and Semenivka, which is approximately in this area. As a result, the effort to move towards Lvov also continues. From the last confirmed frontline position, there are 18 kilometers remaining to the highway. Once reached, the Ukrainian forces could turn and advance towards the Kursk nuclear power plant. We're still waiting for the results. And for the south, offensive actions are also ongoing in the area of the villages of Martinivka and Komishne. However, the Russians have already started actively digging trenches near the highways before the Ukrainian forces reach them. Russian forces have hastily begun digging trenches in the Kursk region amid the Ukrainian forces' advance. Trenches have already appeared near the Lvov-Sudzha highway, Сельховые Dvory, Ivanino, and Dyakonovo-Sudzha. The nearest defensive structure is also located near the village of Viktorivka. Meanwhile, in the Kursk direction, the Ukrainian forces is making significant progress. They advanced 11 kilometers just overnight, but in the Pokrovsk direction, territories and settlements are being lost daily. Yesterday, it was confirmed that 4 villages were lost simultaneously. Today, the Russians continue to advance towards the highway. Reports indicate fighting near the village of Malynivka, which is already beyond the highway. The situation here is extremely difficult, and it appears that stopping the Russian advance is proven unsuccessful. Fighting also continues near Yelizavetivka, Vozdvizhenka, and Novoalexandrivka. The Russians are also continuing their assault on Grodivka, and because they have captured Sergiyevka, Orlivka, and Zhuravlivka, the situation here has seriously deteriorated. This affects not only Grodivka, but also Novogrodivka, as the Russians are bypassing the settlement through the fields. It seems that the Russians are advancing daily with no improvements in the situation here. The activity remains high with 54 assaults and continuous fighting in the past 24 hours. In the Toretsk direction, the Russians continue to advance. Unfortunately, like in the Pokrovsk direction, the Toretsk area is also receiving very little attention. While everyone is focused on the Ukrainian forces' successes in the Kursk direction, the Russians are steadily moving forward. It appears that New York has already been captured, with Pivdenne and Zalizne also under Russian control. Now assaults are ongoing towards Toretsk, then Nelipivka, and also Sukha Balka. Friends, as you can understand, if they manage to capture Toretsk at their current pace, this is entirely possible, the Russians will then be in a position to move directly towards Kostiantynivka. Overall, the situation is grim, and the Russians are gradually continuing to take control of the Donetsk region. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the situation is relatively calm. The Russians are only making breakthroughs near the village of Bilahora. However, this doesn't mean that the Russian plans are on hold. Most likely, they are waiting for new reserves, and in the near future, we can expect more attacks in this area. In the Siversk direction, the level of activity has decreased for now. The Russians are assaulting Verkhnyokamensky and Spirny with only 5 attacks recorded in the past 24 hours. To remind you, the Russians previously conducted up to 20 assaults per day in this area. As of today, there have been no changes along the front line here. In the Crimea direction, Russians continue to assault Nevsky, Terny, with battles ongoing in the forest near Crimea. However, as before, the Ukrainian forces successfully repel all attacks and there are no changes in the situation. In the Svatov area, the situation remains unchanged. Fighting continues for Berestove, and for the south, the Russians are attempting to assault the village of Makiyevka, but they are not making any progress, so the front line remains stable. In the Kupyansk direction, the level of activity is higher. There are ongoing battles for Sinkivka, then Novosinovo and Kolesnikivka, with the Russians shelling the villages and attempting to break through. However, despite these efforts, the front line hasn't changed in the past 24 hours. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians have resumed the assaults on Gleboke and are attempting to break through to the settlement of Lipty. Battles for Vovchansk and the village of Tykhe also continue. The Ukrainian forces report that the Russians have brought in reserves near Vovchansk, leading to increased activity. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces are striking targets on Russian territory, and the governor of the Belgorod region stated.
Обстановка в нашей Белгородской области продолжает оставаться крайне сложной и напряженной. Ежедневные обстрелы со стороны вооруженных сил Украины, разрушенные дома, раненые, погибшие мирные жители. Поэтому принимаем решение с сегодняшнего дня на всей территории Белгородской области с целью дополнительной защиты населения, с целью оказания дополнительных мер поддержки пострадавшим, объявить чрезвычайную ситуацию регионального уровня с последующим обращением в правительственную комиссию с просьбой объявить чрезвычайную ситуацию федерального уровня.
Overall, the war is progressing according to the plan. In the Kurakhove direction, the Russians continue their battles for Krasnohorivka. This small settlement spans only 2 kilometers and 500 meters, yet the Russians have been fighting for it for half a year. Despite yesterday's successes, the last 3 streets remain under Ukrainian forces' control. The Russians are also making repeated attempts to advance towards the village of Kostiantynivka and have reached its outskirts, but the Ukrainian forces are effectively destroying them there. As a result, the front line remains unchanged. In the Vuhledar direction, the Russians continue the assaults on the village of Vodine and Vuhledar itself for the 3rd consecutive day. These attacks have been ongoing, but the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling them, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are attempting to advance in the areas around Robotine and Malatokmachka. However, as before, there are no significant changes, and Russian activity remains relatively low, with only a few attacks per day. In the Kherson direction, the Russians have intensified their efforts trying to draw attention to this part of the front line, possibly to pull Ukrainian forces' reserves away from other areas. They are attempting to break through on the islands and near Kozachi Lageri area. However, there have been no changes along the front line, and the shelling of the right bank continues. Meanwhile, Ben Hodges has stated that after the incursion into Russian territory, there is no doubt that all of Putin's threats are just words.
Gives lie to this perception that somehow Putin will escalate, use nuclear weapons. The worst thing he's done so far is launch an attack at another Ukrainian supermarket. So We have been deterring ourselves for too long.
So you would say there is no red line?
I certainly hope not. Ukrainians are teaching us that the drones do not help you see through all of the fog of war. And there are reports that Gerasimov and the Russian general staff ignored intelligence indicators that Ukraine was about to attack. Ukraine has no interest in conquering Russian territory, but this will help force the Russians to recalculate what they're doing. This is the time for German government, for the Bundestag, to be calm and cool and recognize that this is Ukraine defending itself against Russia's attack. I mean, this is classical military doctrine at work, trying to get the momentum, create dilemmas for the enemy, relieve pressure from other places.
While all of this is true, if we look at the situation realistically, there has been no improvement along the front line so far. So we wait to see how events will unfold and hope the plan succeeds. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.